Distinguished colleagues, my name is Kirill Pozdnyakov, and as part of this session of Gaida Forum 2022, we will talk about the regulatory reform in Russia. We are joined by Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Dmitry Grigorenko. Mr. Grigorenko, the regulatory guillotine was supposed to lower the regulatory burden on businesses. This process was finalized a year ago. Where are we now? Well, it's up to the business community to assess where we are now. It's not up to the government or to the agencies, particularly the regulatory supervisory agencies. Now, we do have our own internal findings, but that's mainly execution versus plan. And in this sense, we've been quite successful. This reform has been ongoing since 2019, and it was a dual job. First, we had to revise those mandatory requirements, those regulations. We had to streamline them.
Находились в таком состоянии, что обязательные требования — это те требования, которые бизнес должен
These are the must-haves and must-dos for the business community. Standards, conditions, terms and distances, and there are quite a lot of them. And they kept piling up. New things were added, old things were retained, and at the end of the day, we found out there was a staggering number, a staggering stock. Well, first we needed to do an inventory of that stock, whether they are aligned with the realities. The second job was to reform the oversight controls. Any requirement could be good or bad. But also need to oversee its execution. Yes, you can always ruin those controls, like a police officer checking your driving license. You can have a glance at it and say, yes, drive on, or you can look at it from different angles. You can ask to go through a breathalyzer test. Those mandatory requirements, they kept piling up, and critics said there was quite a lot of them, and some really looked bizarre and outdated. Is that true? How successful have you been? Well, Russia actually assumes the entire legal framework from the Soviet Union, and we kept using it and streamlining it. But Russia was quite a different country from the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union also assumed some of the laws from the previous times. About 12,000 regulations have been scrapped, and 9,000 were passed in the Soviet Union. So that was passed before 1991, just to put it in the context. And there were some of the regulations on the number of the eggs that have to be confiscated from the village by the Red Army soldiers in World War II. And digitalization made some of the mandatory requirements look quite weird in terms of paperwork, and we had to streamline it. So we live both offline and online at the moment. And if you had just the requirement to do it on paper, we removed it. So we had to extend that requirement to the electronic format, e-paperwork. Yes, take as an example the feedback form that you're supposed to have in any HoReCa outlet. You know what I mean? But today we live in a digital world, and it looks quite strange why you should only have it on paper. These companies have websites. Some companies don't have brick-and-mortar offices. They only provide their services online. There are a lot of examples like this.
не к каким-то там революционным вещам, а
Again, it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. Because the world's changing, technology is changing,
говоря, основная эта задача была не
and
отказаться от этого
our key
всего, а
goal was not
делать
to remove it,
эти требования, ну, в соответствии с
to scrap it altogether, but to align it with the realities.
требований вообще было
More than
посчитано, и сама процедура
300,000 requirements were revised,
проходила через
and
группы, так называемые, которые
that
были
inventory was done by, that process was done by the working group that engaged businesses, and they had the veto right, they had the right to vote, so it was a collective body,
требования рассматривались. И, собственно
and
говоря,
they
решение самого же
reviewed
бизнеса,
all those requirements, and the business community decided to keep some of them.
когда
And it's quite an important point. Sometimes critics say all of the requirements are bad. No, that's not true. There are a lot of requirements that are quite necessary. You said that requirements keep piling up, the world's changing, we add new requirements. It seems to be like it's a perpetual process. Or is there a tool that would allow us not to repeat the previous mistakes, not to add new ones? We do have this tool, and we've been using this tool. We now have it as part of our legislation. The first provision implies that once in 6 years we have to reconfirm those, or revise those requirements. Even if we don't change this regulation, even if we keep it as is, we have to look at it once again, once in 6 years, and to reaffirm it. Why once in 6 years, not once in 5 years? We took the stats. 6 years is the average term for the regulation to remain relevant. And again, there are going to be only 2 dates when new regulations could be introduced in Russia: the 1st of March and the 1st of September. It's quite convenient for the business community. They know that there could be only 2 dates when the government could change the rules to add new regulations. Yuri, it just helps you to manage your expectations. What about the licensing procedures? Is the same happening there? More transparency? Yes, this reform is happening across the board. It applies to any permits, certificates, licenses, requirements that the business community needs to comply with. So the next stage was that we realized that licensing also needs to be reformed, but we use more precise, incisive actions. We need to streamline the processes and procedures that we already have. We don't challenge the need to obtain a license or a permit. What we say is that we could significantly simplify the way you get this license or permit, and digitalization has really helped us a lot. We did an inventory of the requirements that you need to comply with to get a permit or a license, and what we saw was that very often there are a lot of requirements when the applicants have to bring a paper from the adjacent ministry or agency, so we can actually get rid of those papers, and the ministries and agencies could exchange those documents in between. And that has greatly simplified those licensing procedures. We are now running a pilot project. It's been on for 6 months. It's the Emergencies Ministry, it's the Health and Safety Watchdog, and the Russian Accreditation Agency. So we fine-tuned this procedure. We have a database. It's cloud-based, and you can access it through the e-government website. It's called gosuslugi.ru. You can send an application through this website, and the deadlines dropped. Yes, they just went down. Usually it used to be 2 months, like 45 working days, and this pilot project demonstrates that we can go down to 14.2 days, like 2 weeks or 15 days. And the number of requirements, the number of paperwork has been cut by 2. It's very convenient, it helps it to cut the burden on the applicant. It's more transparent, it's faster, more convenient, and it's much simpler. So we talk about streamlining. You mentioned this word several times. What are the key criteria that you use to change regulatory activities? Now, if we go back to oversight and controls, just as we said, you can split it into 2 parts. First is the requirement per se, we talked about it, minimizing, streamlining, revising, and second, the controls themselves. And in terms of these procedures, we are streamlining them too. We have passed a federal law. It was quite an arduous task. It took us a lot of time to draft it, and I really appreciate the efforts by the Parliament and the business community, business associations. So we work together to produce this new law, and today inspections and controls should only rely on the risk-based approach. We've been talking about it for a long time. We finally have it on the books. So why? The risk-based approach implies that there will be no more inspections for the sake of inspections. Before you do an inspection, you have to do a ranking of the risks, and you have to understand what would be the risk if you don't do this inspection and someone violates something. And if there are several risks, you have to do the ranking and pick the one that would bring the biggest losses to the individual and to the government. So the ministries and agencies need to transform their activities. They can't just do those inspections once in a year or once in 6 months. So we inspected you today, and we'll inspect you the next year too. Yes, so it's completely changed now. You need to know why you're there, what kind of violation you're supposed to track, and you need to explain why it cannot be eliminated without an inspection. So again, the risk-based approach is the key one because it changes the entire framework. And there are a lot of other tools in place. And again, some of the inspection methods could vary. Prevention should prevail over on-site inspections. So we do have the right tools. But again, the approach should be completely different. And we do see some of the results. The number of inspections just plummeted versus 2019. Well, we didn't have anything in 2020 with a freeze on inspections in 2020. You're absolutely right, it was the year of COVID-19. And the 2021, well, it was also a post-COVID-19 year. And maybe the figures would not look that good for us. But if we compare 2021 to 2019, the number of inspections halved. Instead of 1.5 million, it's 700,000 only. But if we compare the past 6 months of 2019 to the past 6 months of 2021, then we're going to see a 4-fold decrease in terms of inspections. So the law has been enforced, it's up and running, and we also digitized those control procedures. We now have a database. It's a cloud-based one, and all the administrative agencies are connected to it. Why? Again, it's no surprise to anybody. Everything is in the cloud. Absolutely. We don't have those flash drives anymore. But since it's a cloud, this agency cannot hide something, or to add something, or to adjust something. This system allows you to see all the data in real time, and these agencies cannot tweak something or hide something. This data can now be trusted. You can see and track the deadlines, the numbers, the volume. We know what's the reason for the violation. And we can work with this data to move to an ideal world where there should not be any inspections at all. Well, Mr. Grigorenko, we now have a pre-trial appeal procedure. What's the point? And who's been using it? Unfortunately, whenever you have controls and oversight, you always have complaints about those actions. And this new procedure allows you to file a complaint in a convenient way. In a digital way, you can complain against the outcome of an inspection or against the actions of the inspectors. We now have this service on the e-government platform on gosuslugi.ru. So you can file a complaint. The average deadline for consideration is 2 weeks, and it's been going down, by the way. Since everything is digital, you cannot ignore this complaint because it's all registered in the system. This agency cannot hide it. And you can also make sure that this complaint doesn't end up in the hands of the inspector which did that inspection to avoid a conflict of interest. And you can then see what the ultimate result will be. What about the digital service? How does it really work? I'm referring to those complaints. Can you show it to us? Yes, I could show it to you. It's just 3 clicks away. Let's go to Gosuslugi, the government website. Let's go to services, right? That's where we are. Here you can file a complaint against a decision of a oversight agency. Here are some of the reasons. A procedure has been violated, the reason. These are the model ones. We have not invented them. We don't take them out of the blue. We just use the stats and then categorized everything. You can choose anything. Okay, let's take that man in the headgear. I guess this is one of the most often used. Yeah, I just used the picture. So you want to stay or suspend the execution of a decision. So if you click this menu, you'll get the options, this drop-down menu, and you also need to indicate the number of the inspection, because all the inspections have numbers, and it's done ex post, and I'm registered there, and if there were several inspections, it will fill in, pre-fill the data, and you'll have all the data in there. Just choose the inspection itself. So you can see everything. And here's the form where you can write what you want to say. It's like 9,000 characters, basically 3 pages. You can add some documents, then say continue and send it. And you can keep track of any events. So it took us roughly a minute, absolutely. Then you click 2 times, you sign it with your digital signature, and that's it. Is there a mismatch? You know, we are kind of client-centric, we simplify everything for the businesses, but our regulatory bodies are, having a more challenging time. Well, we're always looking for this fine line, In an ideal world, there are no inspections because everyone is law-abiding and there are no complaints because there's nothing to complain about. Even if there are inspections, you cannot really complain about it. But that's an ideal world. But in reality, it's a kind of a fluid process. It's a process of change and improvements. Regulatory requirements change. Life is changing, businesses change, the environment is changing. So everything is changing. If it were a static world, we could have made it ideal. We could make procedures perfect, regulations perfect, and we could make inspectors, hire perfect inspectors, and the business community would readjust and know what are the requirements. And no inspections, no complaints, but since it's all fluid and again, it's not a linear process, we have those different shifts and drastic changes like COVID-19, or there could be shifts in different industries. Well, that's really good, great. And this is why you have a feeling that you're always being inspected and there are always complaints. You might have this sentiment from time to time, but digitalization, and I gave you some of the numbers, could really transform regulatory activities. So our goal is to reach that balance, that fine line when inspections will be inevitable. What you're really angry about is not the fact of inspection. It's when you're really criticize you about something. No, it's not actually the procedures themselves. It's when you have the 3 apartments. I was inspected, but my neighbors were not inspected, and we live in the same conditions. You need to explain to people why we inspect only you, not your neighbors. So we need to make sure that there is some justice and people are aware of it. So if we are in a world where one apartment violates the rules and the 2 others don't, and we only go after the person who violates, then everyone feels that it's justice, it's fair. And you should be aware that if you violate, inspectors will come after you. That's what our goal should be, and then the number of inspections and procedures would drop, and they would be of a different quality, of a different nature, and the attitude to inspections would be different. That's what's important. That's what should be our goal. We cannot live without inspections, without oversight. I hope everyone understands this, but we just need to walk this fine line to make sure that it's fair, and digitalization gives us a chance to do it, or at least, to have that, to move towards this feeling of justice. Thank you so much, Mr. Grigorenko.